So hi everybody, it's Steve Napier. You're welcome to the Circle of Brilliance. Today we're going to continue our discussion about current affairs and where the players involved in said affairs might end up plotting on the change grid and how they got there, why they're there, where they should be, et cetera, et cetera. So we're just going to look at these situations from a tension management perspective. Last time around, we started talking about gun legislation and all that sort of stuff, talked about the different players where they may be. But in the past week, two very interesting cases have come up regarding gun usage. And so because this one's on the screen, let's start with this one. So there's a 65-year-old guy, Kevin Monahan, lives in a rural area of upstate New York. And this group of four girls were out looking for another friend's house, and they're out in a rural area, totally dark, very spotty cell coverage, so they, not good GPS or anything like that, and they accidentally turned down the wrong driveway. And yes, the driveway had a sign posted that said no trespassing, but it said trespassers will be prosecuted. Instead, this guy opened fire, and one of the shots that he fired went through the car windows and shot one of the passengers. They keep saying that the girl who was shot was the driver. She was not. She was one of the passengers in the vehicle. And then this guy, when the police came to his house, refused to come out. And so they spent a lot of time on the with the 911 operator trying to talk to this guy. Finally, he allowed the police to come in, where they got into an hour-long conversation before he was taken into custody. And so it's real interesting. That's our guy. So, and I'm 65, and I'm kind of thinking like, well, what's going on in that head? That says, and the moment my head goes, what's going on in their head, I go, there's a change grid involved. So, hi T, how are you?
I'm fine.
Good, good, good. And so I want to bring out just our regular old composite diagram, just to say that there are definitely some players that are involved here. So let's start with the group of gals that are just out and about, trying to get to another friend's house and turn down the wrong driveway. So where do you think they were on? Where were they on the grid before the tragedy occurred, before they turned down that driveway? What would you guys say? Where was this group of gals on the change grid?
Well, it seemed like they were trying to figure out where they were going to be going.
Yeah, yeah,
And so they were kind of in the analytical, amiable,
yeah. And so I don't think they were up grid anywhere. I mean, we only know what's been talked about in the news, but based on what's been talked about, it didn't seem like they were in any kind of a panic state. If anything, I think that T's observation is right. David, go ahead. What would you like to throw in?
I was going to say not till the shots occurred.
Right, and that's what we're going to talk about in just a second. So then where did they move to? But I think T's probably right. They were out there trying to solve a puzzle, trying to sort things out. And so obviously they're trying to get somewhere. So maybe there's some driver energy, and they're out with friends. So maybe that's a little bit of amiable driver energy. And then they try to figure something out. That's a little bit of analytical driver energy. So I think right around here, that's where they basically were. And again, this little slice right here is where the advocator lives. So I'm sure that some of these gals in the car were going like, well, we could do this, or maybe we should do this, or I think we missed the turn. Some of that is advocator kind of thing. Go back and do this, go do this. And then you got obviously the person driving who's, just trying to figure out where they're all at. So I think this is a pretty good starting place for people who are involved. I don't know what was going on in the Monahan household beforehand, so I don't know where they were on the change grid. So next thing that happens is that the gals turn onto the driveway. Now, they turn on the driveway. I believe they were in the same spot. He comes out, and again, there's no conversation. There's nothing at all. He shoots his gun. Now, you can imagine where the girls were when the window shattered, and now they're wondering, what's going on. So where do you think the gals moved on the change grid the moment the shot was fired?
Press
Stress. How far up do you think?
all the way up.
All the way up, because now they're truly in a life or death situation. They have very little ability to do anything about it. Perceived challenge extremely high. Now you got the shooter. he comes out on the port. Where is he on the change grid to start, shooting guns?
Driver energy.
A driver energy.
Yeah, but he's got to be far right driver. I mean, outgrid, way
Yeah.
outgrid to just take a shot for no reason.
Yep. So obviously he thought he faced some sort of a big challenge. So I'm imagining he felt like there was some invasion, some threat, something was going on. So I can see how he would perceive a high challenge. But because he has that weapon, what did he perceive his ability to be?
High.
Quite high. And that would put him in the outgrid danger zone. So um, obviously in the outgrid danger zone, we talked about this before, as people move further and further into that danger zone, they believe that the rules don't apply to them. They feel comfortable creating policy on the fly, purely to make things the way they want, and on and on. So he was definitely out here. Now, why do we think it's fair to say that he was actually under no imminent threat?
Nobody
There
got
was-
out of the car.
Yeah, there
Every-
was no indication that anybody was confronting him or yeah.
Right.
He
There was
got out
no,
of the car.
yeah. And I'm kind of going like, well, if turning down a driveway is cause for getting shot at, I don't want to be, an Amazon delivery guy. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't want to drive for UPS. I don't want to there's many reasons why people turn down a driveway that's perfectly legit. So so you can't claim, you can claim trespassing if you've told someone to leave your property and they return. But there are justifiable reasons why someone goes down a driveway. If he wanted no one to go down the driveway, he could have put up a gate. He had options. So I think it's really interesting to see what happens now. All right, so now the girls are very far up grid.
It could have been a process server,
Well,
not at that time of night, or the sheriff investigating.
right. There's lots of legitimate, and you know what else it could be? Someone was lost. So, it's
Exactly.
well, couldn't I have been Ed McMahon going there to deliver his, $1 million check for winning the Publishers Clearinghouse giveaway sweepstakes? I mean, there's plenty of reasons why someone would go down a driveway, and that certainly doesn't warrant shooting at somebody. So we know he's in serious trouble.
What time of day was this?
About well, it was evening hours because
Okay.
the girls were going to one of their friends' houses,
But it
and
wasn't
already
midnight.
dark. It was already dark. Yeah. So we here we have this situation now. The medics arrived, all that. They tried to administer care on site, do some CPR. It was too late, so the gal ends up passing away right there on the spot. The police are doing their thing. Where are the police on the grid when they are there trying to talk to this guy who refuses to come out of his house?
Expressive driver.
An expressive driver. So you can imagine that they're doing their best to try to communicate with the guy, get him to calm. I don't know what the actual words there that were exchanged, but I know that had the police been driven drivers, what would they have done?
Oh, they
Arrested.
would got it.
They would have stormed the house.
Or the house, yeah.
And actually they had legitimate reason to storm the house. This whole idea about your home is your castle. When a crime like this has happened, I think that changes the rules. I'm not sure, I'm no lawyer, but I think that changes the rules about being able to storm the house if you need to get the person, because he has a gun. So, and he's shooting at people. So yeah, okay. Now, Shags, are you an attorney? I don't remember what your full background is.
Yeah, tax and estate planning. So
Okay, so
I
criminal
only
law
work with the
was not-
bodies after they're cold.
Okay, that's good to know. We'll make note of that. All right. So anyway, so we have the police there, and obviously, I do believe that most police officers are good people, and I'm sure they're trying to de-escalate, get to the bottom of it, whatever the case may be. So being a bit of an expressive driver or an analytical driver, but I imagine that's more about the detectives that are coming to do the crime scene whole sort of stuff. They're probably a little bit more of an analytical driver. But in the throw, until you have that guy in custody, everyone is still under some sort of jeopardy. So you got to believe that that's where the police are. Maybe the chief negotiator, maybe the guy in charge is right here at 1010, just to make sure that, everything is happening and happening in the good time frame, or whatever the case may be. Now, the media. The media find out about the story. Where is the media?
They're up grid.
They're upgrade. How far and why? Why is the media?
They're in power stress because they smell a story.
They smell a story. And that whoever gets the scoop, whoever, whatever, that seems to still make a difference out there in the world. So maybe they're a little bit more up in power stress. They're trying to get information. They're trying to, get their story out, whatever the case may be. And but the people who run the media outlet are probably out here driven as well, because we know they're trying to make money. They're trying to do whatever. That's an outgrid behavior. That's a driver behavior. Who else is playing in this whole scenario? Who else do you think is in?
Neighbors.
Oh, yeah, neighbors. So where do you think the neighbors might be?
Up
They
grid.
upgrade. Now, again, it's a rural area, so I don't know how many people are close enough to have heard the gunshot, but the sound of a gunshot travels quite a distance. So, yeah. Now they would be more upgrid, and probably would be wise to stay, out of the way or in the house, or whatever the case may be. Okay, who else is involved? Oh,
What about the parents?
the parents of the girl? Where do you imagine they are?
Oh, they're up grid.
Oh,
They're
upgrade.
way upgrade, and sooner
Of
or
all the
later,
girls.
of all the girls, exactly right. And so sooner or later, their upgrade shock, dismay, whatever. Even if we just follow Kubler-Ross's model for adjusting after death and dying, and that, they're going to end up angry. So, we can talk about the steps they're going to go through in order, but sooner or later, this very upgrid situation is going to become a very in-grid situation, or rather, sorry, a very out-grid situation. And, that's when the real battle is going to be. But, and then who else? Oh, there were a lot of people. I forget who launched the GoFundMe page. They're trying to raise $50,000 for the funeral expenses and all that sort of stuff. But so people that are making a donation to a GoFundMe, where do you think they are on the change grid?
Down grid.
Down grid? Okay, how far down you want to go?
Just power apathy.
Power apathy. So get power apathy. They believe they need to do something, but they wish someone else would do it. So maybe a little bit further up.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe an analytical. I got to tell you, if I'm actually going to go through the process of making a contribution to one of those things, I probably need to be a little bit more upgrade. So I'm going to take the action. But it's definitely not up here. I mean, maybe some people have decided to do it. So, for example, the other case we're going to look at is that poor young guy that got shot on the porch. Well, a lot of very famous people immediately started trying to rally awareness around the situation and funding and all that. And so those people who were kind of like spearheading the whole GoFundMe thing on that side of things were probably a bit further upgrade, because remember, this is the influencer role. And so I think a lot of them stepped into that role of being influencers to try to get people to help this family and just try to stop this nonsense that continues to be happening. Okay, so get the idea, talking about the players that are involved. It's interesting to see the whole dynamic. Now, this has not been something yet. Neither of these cases have been something yet that have been talked about by legislators, politicians at the national level. There's been a lot of discussions more at the local level, maybe state level, whatever, but nothing's really come out to say that. I know there was a few statements made, but statements don't really mean all that much. I'm talking about people actually saying or doing something. So right now, it would appear that the world of legislation, politics, et cetera, at the national level is where on the change grid when it comes to these girls' particular situation. Where do you think they are? At least where do they appear to be?
It's analytical downgrade.
They appear to be downgrid around the whole thing. Well, when you are feeling upgrade, like power stress or outgrid a little bit, but in a healthy spot about a situation, and you see that the people that are in a position to do something about it are downgrid, what does that do to your upgridness?
Makes it higher.
Makes it higher. It's pushing people further and further and further up grid. This is why it's so important that as soon as possible after any kind of these events, that the people who can deliver a message of understanding, compassion, support, give us good information, etc. We need to hear from them sooner, not later. And unfortunately, that has not been the case, at least so far, with either one of these two big cases.
Well, supposedly Biden did contact the mother of the boy that was shot.
I would hope so. In fact, that's our next case. So you
Yeah.
guys are all familiar with that case?
No,
Okay, it's actually a part of this article. So rather than dig up the original one, this is the second one. You'll see him when you see a face. But it's stuff like this. I know for a fact that she comes from a good family. I'm glad of that, but I think that's irrelevant. A very good family. I know them personally, and she's a young girl that was taken way too young. Well, Sheriff, I'm not going to disagree with you about that, but I don't know what is the point he's trying to make when he talks about she's coming from a good family. Would it be less of a tragedy if she didn't come from a good family? You guys know what I'm saying there? Because it's some like
A lot of that's code.
a lot of that is code. And so, and that's why, you
Yeah,
listen to
she's
what
not from the hood.
yeah. So the sheriff is basically, I think, trying to diminish, deflect, whatever, but still say, she was taken way, 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 way too young. All right, fine. What are you going to do about it? Becomes the real question. Oh, good grief. Southwest has grounded all flights across the US. Oh my. Okay, so the other situation is Ralph Garl. He's the 16-year-old boy who was out to pick up his two younger brothers who were twins. And so I don't know, somebody said, go and pick up your brothers, or go and pick up your siblings. And he made one of these mistakes that I am sure all of us have made, and it happens very frequently when we are here. So there is a difference between 115th Street and 115th Avenue and 115th whatever the street was actually called for this. How many times have we ended up on the wrong street? We should have been on street and we were on Avenue instead. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Well, I ended up at the IRS. No, IRS. What was it? Not the IRS, but it was in Washington, D.C., and it was where Secret Services and all the CIA stuff and everything. And, I said, I'm sorry, I entered the wrong place.
right.
Ready, well, you turn around and you get out of here.
Yeah, that's right. That's what they do. They don't shoot you. And so right. Okay, anyway, so he went to pick up his brothers, and he goes up to the right address on the wrong street, and rings the doorbell. It's about 10 o'clock at night, and this 84-year-old man comes to the door after it took him a while, I guess, from what the kid was saying, comes to the door, and the guy immediately shoots him through the glass in the storm door, shoots him in the head. The kid falls to the ground, and then the guy shoots him again in the arm. And so this is what we're kind of looking at. Well, then this poor guy, he's out there looking for some help, and he's calling for whatever, and finally someone comes out, and before they'll talk to him, they made him lay down on the ground and put his hands above his head. And I'm like, what on earth are you doing? What's happening here? What's happening here? But again, as we look at it more and more from a tension management perspective, we can at least understand where the various players are that's involved on this. Now, apparently that guy, I forget the shooter's name. I'm sure it's in here somewhere. But Yeah. Couldn't save her. Okay, now we're back to the gal. But here's this poor kid. Now he got to go home. Apparently, the bullet that hit his head did not penetrate his skull. So he was a very lucky young man for being able to do that. And you can tell from the bandage that his arm wound was somewhere around his bicep. So he was a very, very lucky kid based on what was going on. So they take this guy into custody, um, and the shooter into custody. And a couple of hours later, they release him, and he goes home. Well, then the police chief later on, because people are kind of going like, "What do you mean that he's not being held in custody? He just shot someone who's now in critical care, and why is this going on? What's happening? Oh, just a second. I
The
don't know
news
what I
always,
rolled
news
over.
comes on in the corner. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, wow, talk about uninvited. That raised my tension. But I didn't kill anybody, did I? So anyway, he's well enough that he was sent. Well, how about this? He's well enough physically that he was sent home to recuperate. So that's just a blessing all the way around. But they released this guy, and the police chief went on TV and said the reason why they let him go was because, according to Missouri law, you can only hold someone for 24 hours before you have to charge them with a specific crime. And the prosecutor didn't think that there was enough data yet to establish that a crime had been committed or what crime that would be, because they're talking about like the stand your ground kind of law. I don't think stand your ground allows you to shoot somebody through a glass door. So who's outside of your house at the time. So anyway, she says, and one of the things that's really missing that we needed to wait for was a statement from the victim. And my head immediately goes, what if the victim were dead? What are you going to do now? Whose statement are you waiting for? Yeah. Well, that's true. Shag is saying at that age, he's probably not much of a flight risk. However, interestingly enough, they did ultimately decide that two crimes had been committed. They are still thinking about adding hate crime charges to the situation, but they issued a warrant for his arrest, and it took them over 2 days to take him into custody. So, is that because he wasn't at home? There was a protest that was in front of his house, so maybe he decided to go somewhere but or maybe other family members decided to kind of protect him somehow or another. But bottom line is what the bottom line is. So that's the gist of the story. I think it's just one of the worst stories we've certainly heard in recent times. But we are looking at this from a tension management perspective. So let's start at the beginning. So here we have this young man, a 16-year-old kid, whose parents have said to him, would you please go pick up your brothers? And they're your siblings. I don't know if it's identical twins or not, but they happen to be twins. Where do you think our good man is here when he's being sent? So where's Ralph when it comes to running this errand that he's been sent to do? You guys guess.
Analytical driver.
An analytical driver. Yeah. So he's going, I'm going to go do something. I'm going to go pick up my siblings. And so that's definitely an outward kind of a thing. Now, was he very happy to be sent on this? It sounds like, based on the backstory on the kid, which again adds a very interesting human element to the story, but is irrelevant to what really is going on. This is a very gifted kid. So a sort of a musical prodigy and very talented, very involved, top student, on and on and on. Um, um, But none of that really should have anything to do whatsoever with what really happened because the shooter didn't know that at the time, and it shouldn't. It doesn't really matter, is my whole point. So they're putting all this emphasis on what a great kid he was, and that his aunt's a doctor and mom's a nurse, and all that is really, really wonderful, wonderful stuff. But none of that really changes the key dynamic that's in play here. But why do you think they're sharing with us the family's backstory, Ralph's backstory?
Good. No,
Sympathy.
yeah.
Okay, okay, again, and the question is from attention management perspective, why would the media, why would anyone want to be adding that kind of data?
Oh, to validate arresting the guy.
To validate arresting the guy? Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. What else? Tim, Chris, you guys want to chime in? Edie, anybody else?
Well, it gets back to that notion of a good family. You know, the kid was, I just happened to catch this morning. I didn't watch much news, but he happened to be given 2 scholarship offers from Yale. So he's, you know, he's not a hood kid. I mean, he's a good kid who's, so there is, yeah, it engenders sympathy and it engenders outrage,
Mhm.
but it shouldn't matter.
It shouldn't matter.
But we do put more value on people who tend to have more value. We do,
Well, and I understand that that's a
whether we
bias.
should or not.
Well, right. Again, we talked about biases before, and there's a lot of, or at the heart of what you've just described, there are plenty of biases that exist out there that for somehow or another, we're saying like one person has more merit than another person has by virtue of the fact that they were raised in a more favorable kind of a setting or whatever. And we can talk about come from a good family all you want, but how many of you also know very wealthy people who are totally screwed up? So, it really should have nothing whatsoever to do with any of that. It should
Yeah, I mean,
stay-
good family is code. It's
Good
pure
family
code.
is code, and that's what we need to start recognizing that first and foremost, what this is, they're trying their best to say it's not racial. This is my personal opinion. This is entirely racial. And so, because of that, I don't know why those hate crime charges have not already been added to the mix. I do believe, and this is just me talking, I said I just wanted to look at the tension management aspects of it, but I'm so upset by this situation. I'll say what I want to say, and then you guys can tell me what's going on tension management wise. Why do I believe that had the races of the two people involved been opposite, that shooter would have been in jail, never to see the light of day for a long time? Am I wrong, or do you
No,
guys?
no, that's just the pattern in our country. I
That's
mean,
the
it's just
pattern.
it's just the way it always is. So why would you think differently? Yeah.
Right. It's just terrible. Okay, so Chris, Tim, I mean, I would love for you guys to chime in because right now, I just kind of feel like I need to hear from people who share elements with his. So you guys are also men of color. You are African Americans. How do you feel about this particular situation? Are you in a place where you can talk or? Yeah, no, okay. Well,
So T, I'm actually driving, so that's why I stayed on mute. I'm sure you can hear the background.
yeah, it's okay though. We'd rather hear your voice.
Um, well, I'm outraged. I agree with your assessment of how you see it and others that have chimed in on it. And it just seemed, and it's particularly interesting and relevant to the work that I do because this
Yes.
is the struggle, this is the challenge in the DE&I space, and it has been for a long time. So, you know, if I'm honest, I don't see the change happening,
Right.
but that doesn't mean that we don't continue the struggle
Yeah, because
to
we can
see
only
and to
hope
see
that,
change.
yeah, hopefully someday change will occur, meaningful change will occur. But boy, it doesn't seem like that day is coming anytime soon or soon enough. So there you go. Chris, you have anything you want to throw in?
Yeah, I agree with all the responses and agree with your position as well. But the thing that you have to share those background stories because I think so many people are desensitized to what is actually happening. And for me, in the entirety of my life, it's connected to SD.
Yeah.
And so, for me, this is just another example of a daily occurrence. Like I went into the store yesterday and got followed around by two people, watched by two people. So this is a consistent daily thing that's escalated in a moment, right? And so like this young kid doing what any young kid should be able to do, like you said, we've all probably experienced this at some point in time, showing up at the wrong location completely by accident, and then this, right? So it's no different than going to a store and having to have a conversation that escalates and get out of the way. And next thing you know, when someone calls the police, it could get escalated. I could get shot. Anything can happen, right?
Yep,
so
absolutely.
I think without the normalization, some people wouldn't even give it a second thought because it seems like this happens every week.
So do you then think it's good that his backstory is shared so that, no, I'll ask you the question. Why would you think it's good for his backstory to be shared in the news? Or how is that working out from a tension management perspective, I guess is my real question. Whose tension does that manage?
I think I think all stakeholders are kind of impacted by it, but I agree with the statements earlier. It shouldn't matter, but it does, and it's relevant because it shouldn't matter if he had things that he did in his background. He's still 16. At 16, that's what happens. That's what you do. Mischievous things can be a part of it. So if he were to do, if he stole some candy from a store, would his life be of less value because of one incident? How many incidents we avoided, right? So from a tension management perspective, it causes everybody to kind of shift, even the person who did the act, to say, wow, this, I was so far off. If that humanization is a part of his characteristic, is part of his makeup in his core, he could sit back and be like, this is such a huge mistake. Now it's even worse. Yep. So I think everybody could be impacted knowing the story.
Well, because I'm my reaction when I see them talking about backstories instead of staying focused on just the incident is, are they trying to say that that we need to divide all the different races into members of the race that are worthwhile and members of the race that aren't? I mean, that just is repugnant to me. It's like none of us know where the next scientist who's going to cure cancer is going to come from. We don't know.
Yeah, and one more thing, quickly, T. So, if you look at the amount of stories that drive us to this point, whether it's a kid having Skittles in his hand and a candy bar, or somebody just out for a walk, it's not just this story; it's the totality of them to just put awareness on how unsafe people could feel in such an environment and the why people may act the way they do. That you have to put these stories in there to say, all people are doing is trying just to live a normal life. And if we can't get that, what can we get?
Right. Exactly right. Exactly right.
So T, I'll share. This is an interesting story because I had a very similar situation happen to me. My sister lived in a gated community, she and her husband, down in Miami. And I was in town visiting them once, and I actually pulled up to her neighbor's house.
Oh, okay.
The homes are, the floor plans are very similar. The homes are similar, but I don't live in Miami, so I'm not there often. And I was going off of memory, and and when her neighbor opened the door, she just laughed and she said, "You look like Kathy's brother. It's the house next door." And so, but yeah, so this kind of thing can happen. But I'm also thinking about a book that I read about the caste system. And I think that plays a role in this in terms of your question of why do you think the backgrounds were shared? So I think that there are some elements that come into play here in terms of tension management.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Well, and so let's kind of look at that. If I think Kathy pointed out that if we share the story, we're going to increase the tension in the people that are being exposed to the story. And that alone is an interesting dynamic to look at. Again, because of what we've been talking about. Why should someone's backstory make one situation more tragic than another situation? So I think that's an interesting thing to look at. Now, obviously, Ralph's family is where on the change grid? Where would you
Ralph
say?
is the shooter.
No, Ralph is the child. Ralph
The
is
child. Oh, they're
Yeah,
up.
up in
Upgrade.
stress. Up in
they're
stress.
way up in stress, way up in stress. Where's the police department?
Outgrade.
That's a good question. With
Mhm.
some down, maybe power apathy, probably.
Well, I'm wondering why would they, if they're allowed to hold someone for 24 hours, why would they let someone who's just shot someone twice leave custody after only 2 hours? And one of the things they said was, well, because it was the weekend. Well, that's outrageous. I mean, uh, so yeah, so I think the police department is a bit further down grid. And as a result, I don't know that, and again, we only know what we have been told, but if you guys read or listened to the statement by that chief of police, she was basically making up stuff as she was going along. That in the state of Missouri, they can't hold anybody until they get a victim statement. What? So what if the victim isn't able to speak for any variety of reasons? So that seemed to be out of whack. Why would they say, well, we need to investigate further? It seems that you could say, look, you've got an 84-year-old man who has just shot a person twice through the front door, through their own front door. And I would say he could be a bit of a menace. Is that not a reason to hold somebody?
Certainly seems to be one.
Certainly seems to be,
At least
but
take his guns away.
right. Or are they thinking like, well, he's just an old guy. So, well, maybe old guys shouldn't own guns. So, because, you go back to now, so the police seem a bit further down grid. Now they're moving a bit up grid. They're asking for people to be patient. That alone upsets me. Don't ask me to be patient. We're coming up with legitimate sorts of things that need to be addressed, and you're not helping the situation by coming up with nonsense about why you let him go. And now 2 days later, or I think they've taken him into custody, but whatever. I'm kind of babbling. So, where do you think the guy who was shooting was at on the change grid?
Outgrade danger zone.
Outgrid danger zone, and because he's saying he felt that his life was threatened. Well, if you feel like your life is threatened, that would put you upgrid. Someone who truly feels their life is being threatened, would they answer a door?
No.
If you open the door and you peek outside and you see someone, anyone that you don't know, what option did the 84-year-old have other than to shoot through the glass door?
To close the door.
Close the door. And then what could the 84-year-old have done? They could have called the police,
Dialed 911.
dialed 911. They could have done anything. They could have spoken to the person through the door. And nowadays, of course, how many of you guys have got we've got one. How come I can't remember the name of it? What's the name of our doorbells these days?
The Ring doorbell.
The Ring doorbell. I mean, there's plenty of doorbells that have an intercom feature built into them. So why then would an 84-year-old choose to come to that door with a gun in hand and shoot before anything else was said?
No idea.
No idea. But do you believe that when it comes to gun control, that that should be a legitimate question that we ask before someone can have a gun? So, do they have the mental capacity to really be able to do that. Now, of course, if this gets taken to any kind of trial, and I'm going to assume that it will, we know how long trials take. So how many of you think that the chances of him not even surviving the trial period is probably, he's never going to be sentenced. He's never going to end up in jail because things like this take how many years to actually come to closure? He's 84. How long is he going to live, particularly with this stressor? Imagine the amount of cortisol that's
Yeah, they said on the news he'll probably spend the rest of his life in prison. So it's not much.
well, right. And if he's been taken into custody, then I'm sure, I don't know if he can meet bail or whatever, but who knows what even the bail is. I don't know that I've read it.
You said something earlier about a person's mental capacity as it relates to owning a firearm. I think it's more their emotional
Oh,
capabilities.
yeah. And so it becomes interesting to say, well, do we believe that every American should be able to own a gun? Or do we believe, and by the we, I'm talking about America. Does America really believe that everyone should be able to own a gun? Or do we believe that unless there is a good reason to not allow it, people should be allowed to have a gun?
I go with that.
I mean, there's got to be reasons why we say, not now, not this particular situation. And maybe part of that is age related.
And a lot of these people buy 3, 4, 5 guns from 2 or 3 different stores. Where is the reporting on that?
Right. And so these are the things that we kind of go, we have groups that are out there who are in the position to explore these kinds of changes, make these kinds of changes, and they are either going to be very far up grid or very far out grid. So what do you think would put someone in the up grid category for talking about gun control, gun measures? And what about the camp that's out grid? How are they different? And how does this dynamic play out? So from a tension management perspective, why is gun reform so difficult?
Money.
There is money involved. That's the first one. And is the money just about money having to do with the sale and purchase of
No, it's about money to legislators.
money to legislators? There's all kinds of funding that gets put into jeopardy if you don't take the right position on one of these sorts of things. So going back to what we talked about last time around, I think Shags is the one who confirmed this. I really believe that every American today should be issued a musket. So everyone has a gun. You all have a musket. And so because of that's what the founding fathers were really talking about. Yeah. But you get the point. It's like, what's happening? What's really happening? All right. So where the legislators? So we might have some that are out grid. What's the position that the out grid camp has about gun reform, gun legislation?
They know better than anybody.
All right, tell us more about that.
Well, if you're that far out grid, you've convinced yourself of your rightness, and you're not open to influence.
And so you're going to just dig your heels in as hard as you can to hold on to what the current sets of rights are, if not try to relax those rights. And I think we are seeing a lot of laws being relaxed, a lot of guidelines being relaxed across the country, more so than.
Yeah, some states now have open carry. You don't even have to have a license.
Yeah, it's interesting. We lived in North Carolina. When you go to the theater, it says that no concealed weapons are allowed in the theater. And I thought, so if I just brandish it openly, I can see the movie? It's like, what? So I never understood that. So if you got a gun, keep it in your pocket, because if you show it to us, you can't, well, or you can't conceal it. Ugh. Okay, so now you got this other camp that's very far up grid. Who are some of these people, and what are they? What's that camp all about?
Victims.
The victims. And so I've always been curious, how many children is it okay for us to lose before we do something? definitive to change it. And again, it's not about, it's about, yeah, increasing expectations. Yeah, go right ahead, Chris. Oh, Chris, are you there? Okay, yeah, Chris, go ahead, unmute if you want to say something. All right, so we've got this upgrade camp who are going like, we need gun reform and we need it now, we need it now, we need it now. Unfortunately, a lot of this is coming from a place, understandably, but it's coming from a place of upgrade emotions. And when I'm in a state of upgrade emotions, where am I not on the change grid?
In the center.
I'm not in the center where I can do the logical case build, et cetera. And so much of this, the sound, the messaging that's coming out of the upgrade camp is probably being, I'm going to say, diminished somehow. It's not being taken as seriously. It's being just attributed to, people blowing things out of proportion, blah, 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 blah. And so I hate that that's going on, but we need someone from this camp or some large group of people from this upgrade camp to say, based on what we now know, actually, I'm going to go downgrade instead. Just one second. I want to talk about this layer right here. So it may very well be that while we've got all these energizers that are going on and, marches are being held and protests are being held and signs are being painted and all that kind of stuff. That's a very upgrade kind of behavior set. Maybe a little bit on the influencer side of things because they're trying to persuade people, etc. But among all these upgrade people, we can only hope there's some people who say, you know what? I know a lot of the facts. I know a lot of the research because who was talking about that this isn't two incidents. This is two of thousands of similar incidents that are happening and for whatever reason aren't particularly newsworthy.
Yeah. T, I live in Connecticut, and we have some of the more active, thought-based senators and representatives focused on this issue for years since Sandy Hook. So I'm familiar with a lot of people who are operating in that analytical place and working hard step by step by step to address this. So it's happening. It's not, I mean, I'm just using my state as an example, but it is happening, and that's where, a lot of this work is going on. But so I don't think it's that is not happening.
Well, I agree with you, but the difference is that where it is happening is because someone from this upgrade situation or this upgrade energy that's going on was able to move into that analytical mode, or maybe there are a bunch of them, figured things out, advocated for the change, and from those advocators, leaders arose that are now able and willing to go toe to toe with whoever the leaders are from the other camp. So as long as we stay upgrid, we're not going to win anything.
No, absolutely.
So we need to say, you want to say that we've all got rights. Well, our children have a right to live. We have the right to make a mistake and turn down the wrong driveway. We have the right to make a mistake and be at the wrong address. What about those rights? Instead of this idea that, you guys can have all the guns you want and, you can stand your ground, so this is what's really going on from a tension management perspective. If we have a group that is already upgrid and people say and do things that keep them further upgrid, what we're actually doing is, this is a question, you guys, helping or harming, expediting, or what's the opposite to expedite? Delaying the discovery of that thinker's analysis, the truth that the thinkers have available to them, so that the advocators can start pitching to the leaders to do whatever they can do to get this all around. You with me on what I'm saying here?
Yeah. T, is this an example of information can be a very upgrade experience?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so we have to go, who is the one that is drafting the information or capturing the information, then drafting that information into messages, and then distributing those messages. Who are they and what is their motivation behind it? So if their motivation is to make money off of advertising, because the media is probably at the heart of how those messages are being distributed, then we've got a very different issue than if those messages are unifying people to a cause, or getting people to really look at what the facts are when it comes to the prevalence of these sorts of things happening in the country. Yeah. So yeah, yep. All right, so let's just to bring our little pardon me, series to some kind of closure. The important thing to me, out of these two examples, for the purposes of our call, is that you guys are able to recognize that not everyone is in the same place on the change grid when one of these events occurs. And it's really important for us to be able to identify where the different players are in the drama, where these players are on the change grid, so that we can understand why they are operating the way they're operating. And then we can figure out a better place for them to be. So if we really want to take care of both these issues that happened this week, and we want to prevent these issues from happening going forward, where do people need to be on the change grid?
In the center.
They need to be inside that green circle. They need to be inside of there. And if you're inside the green circle, it's not like you're just in a blissful state, maybe the exact center, but we're not talking about that. Just inside the green circle, there is a full awareness of what's going on. It's not just a blissful sort of illusion that everything is perfect and hunky-dory. That's not what happens inside the green circle. Inside the green circle, we're detached from what's going on so that we can observe it a little more dispassionately, a little more logically, if you will. But there's still a lot of possibilities and responses and behaviors inside that green circle. But right now we've got people that are way too energized, and I understand exactly why the tragedies are fresh. But sooner or later, for change to occur, people have to be moved to the center of the change grid. And these leaders need to stop pushing and pushing and pushing for more money, fame, fortune, control, whatever it happens to be. They need to kind of go, we are somehow or another allowing children to continue to be shot. We are somehow allowing senseless death and all that. Maybe we're pushing too hard. We also need to retreat. And maybe the thinkers need to say, instead of collecting all my data for the sake of collecting all my data, maybe I need to bring that data to the awareness of the people that are in the center. And from there, maybe, just maybe, we can come up with a better way to protect the rights of people to have weapons. Like, for example, I'll give you, I think we know a lot of people that go on very long hikes across the desert. I know that almost all of them are carrying a pistol with them when they're doing that. Why do you think someone who's out there hiking through the desert, what's their primary reason why they have a gun?
Wild animals.
Wild animals, most specifically rattlesnakes. So, I don't know if you guys realize that you can't outrun a rattlesnake. So if it's decided to attack you and you stumble across its nest, I mean, it's minding its own business. It doesn't care about you as long as you keep your distance. But the moment it feels threatened, where is the rattlesnake on the change grid?
Upgrade, outgrade.
Upgrade or outgrade, one way or another. They feel very threatened, and their way of dealing with that threat is to fight. And so you better believe that they might first go, can I escape? Can I get into I don't know what a snake lives in, their little den. I don't know what you call where a snake hides during the day, burrow, whatever it is. Can they retreat and hide? Or do they feel like they need to attack?
Snakes live and hiss in their pit.
Hiss in their pit?
Yes, that's what they do. There's a great story about a little Sally snake.
Is there?
Yes, I'll tell it to you off video.
Okay, goodness, Shags, you got so many great stories.
But that's what they do. They live in pits and in crevices.
Okay, fine. So they find something that is already existing or whatever, and they do their best to do, they're there. But they warn you if you're in, even if you're in more of a public park, they'll tell you that you're okay if you stay on the sidewalks or whatever the trails are. But the moment you start walking across the wilderness of the desert, that is not the domain for humans to feel any level of safety. And so that's why they would carry a weapon. I don't want to take those weapons away from them because I'd be taking away the protection they may need when they're out there pursuing something they genuinely love to do. Yeah, I don't know they need to take him to the movie theater. Okay, so that's pretty much the top of our time. Hopefully you guys are finding this interesting. Nobody dropped off. That's always a good sign. I do want to let you know that tomorrow I do leave on for the cruise. I will have high-speed internet, and so I'd like to continue doing our regular story. However, Thursday, I know for certain that's the embarkation day on the ship. And so based on what time we're embarking, which is noon Eastern, I don't think there's any way I'm going to be set up and ready to do a call by 1 o'clock Eastern on Thursday. So let's just skip.
We need you to share your visual background on the trip.
Yeah,
Oh.
where are you going, T?
Well, okay, the ship leaves from Miami, and from Miami, we spend 2 days at sea and end up in Bermuda. Then we spend 6 days at sea on our way to Cork, Ireland. And then we go to Cork, we go to Portsmouth, UK, then we go across to Le Havre, France, and then we end up in Southampton. We disembark in Southampton, and then we go to London for 3 days, and we'll be there for the coronation.
Oh my gosh, that's outstanding.
It really is. It's amazing, just an amazing thing. And obviously, when Diane scheduled this cruise, I guess a couple of years ago, so long before the Queen passed away. So nobody knew when they were going to schedule the coronation. So that's just a fluke. That's just a lucky kind of coincidence. I don't know how lucky it's going to be when I'm reading about the crowds they're expecting. So, and I think I shared with you guys, I had to laugh with Diane. The one thing she's always wanted to do in London and has never done is seen the crown jewels. And I said, well, the hotel is right next door to the Tower of London where the jewels are, but I suspect they're going to be busy using the jewels.
Yeah, they're going to be on their heads.
Right. Well, Diane, I think, was under the impression that the crown jewels are all of like even the jewelry that the Queen would wear, like earrings and necklaces and things like that. And it's like, no, no, no. These are the jewels that the crown owns, and they're all for ceremonial purposes.
Yes.
So, I said, Diane, that might not be, it might not be there. So anyway, that's where we're going and looking forward to it. The only thing I'm not looking forward to is that when you do an Atlantic crossing heading from the US to England, you lose an hour a day. So for 6 consecutive days, there's only 23 hours in each day. I gotta believe that still screws you up. But I will send you guys an email. And with any luck at all, the next week, Tuesday, is a sea day. And so we should have no difficulty at all being able to do a bit of a call, So that's what's happening. So,
well, that's great.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm always happy to travel with Diane. And I think she's lecturing on board. I think she's speaking 6 times on the ship. So it'll be fun to help her with the lectures that she's giving. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So, okay, with that then, thanks everybody for everything. Do notice that Shags texted over to everyone a couple of interesting links. He brought up the one about Antioch, California, where there's all kinds of texts being exchanged. And I do remember that one as well. I just wanted to focus on the gun one since that's what we were talking about last time around. Okay, so with that, thanks everyone for joining in. We shall talk again as early as next Tuesday. So thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.